Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Juvenile Instructor from the 15th of May, 1901, and this article is entitled Lives of Our Leaders, the First Council of the 70, Presidency D. Fjeldsted. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. If anybody is a Danish speaker, please correct me, because I am not. I am just guessing, but I'm hoping that that's close anyway. So we're continuing our Lives of Our Leaders series. Now, back in this time, they called the First Council of the 70. It is today called the Presidency of the 70. And I honestly feel like this is one of the more neglected callings of the church. In reports, I mean. Not necessarily neglected as in there's not enough people in it. There's always seven presidents of the 70. Well, not always, but almost always, unless somebody is taken out for whatever reason. And it shrinks down a bit. Yeah, I don't know that much about this guy except that he's Danish. And I only really know that because of the article we read on Anton H. Lund and his name. His name is definitely not an English name, yeah? So Fjeldsted, I'm not sure what it means. We can look it up later, but yeah. So let's take a look at the article because I really don't know very much about this guy at all, and I don't want to be pretending I do. So let's take a look. Christian Daniel Fjeldsted, and once again, I am guessing at the pronunciation. I'm assuming it's similar to German, so if it's not, once again, correct me. Was born February 20th, 1829 in Lund by Vesta, yeah? Something like that, a suburb of Copenhagen, Denmark. His parents moved in the humbler walks of life and belonged to the respectable working class. Thus, the subject of this sketch was taught early in life to work for a livelihood, and he learned the trade of a molder. A molder? Oh, what does a molder do? Hang on, I have to figure this out, because you can't just drop something like that and move on. Molders cast molten metal into molds to produce solidified castings. Gosh, that must have been difficult. First prepare the shape and shape the sand in which the mold is to be formed. They then prepare the core or inside of the casting by means of a core box and place the pattern into the molding box. Crazy. Huh. Well, that sounds a bit dangerous, I don't want to be working with molten metal, but I guess somebody has to do it, but that's impressive. I'm impressed already. I couldn't do that. After the death of his father, he was obliged, though only 10 years old, to do all he could towards supporting his mother. Gosh, he was 10 when his father died, and then he had to support his mother. That's a lot of pressure on a 10-year-old. At the age of 20, he married a wife, and in 1851 he first heard the glorious truths of the gospel preached, for it had been brought to Denmark the year before through the instrumentality of Apostle Erastus Snow and his fellow missionaries. Oh, they say he was born in 1829, so in 1851 he was 22, yes? Brother Fjeldsted believed and was baptized, together with his young wife, on February 20th, 1852. It was his birthday. It was his 23rd birthday. Well, happy birthday. By Christian Samuel Hansen. Once again, I'm assuming that it's similar to a German pronunciation. And confirmed by Ole N.C. Monster. Monster, huh? I'm assuming that has another meaning. Soon afterwards, Brother Fjeldsted began to preach and bear testimony to his fellow workmen, as he felt anxious that they should enjoy the same blessings that he had become a partaker of. As soon as his employer heard of this, he dismissed him from his service one cold winter day, which virtually meant that he was turned into the street without a penny for the support of himself and family. After a short time, however, he obtained another employment. That is pretty cold-hearted. How dare you switch religions? Get out, Huh. Not long after his baptism, he was ordained to the priesthood and appointed to preside over a district on the island of Amager. He then held weekly meetings in his home. on Sundays, he usually performed missionary work in the neighboring towns and villages. July 25th, 1853, he was ordained an elder by Peter O. Hansen, and in the fall of 1855, he was called to labor as a traveling elder in the Copenhagen Conference. After working in that capacity for about 1 year, he was appointed to preside over the Aalborg Conference, which is where Anton H. Lund is from. So, it's interesting that they knew each other, actually, since Anton Lund eventually became an apostle, and Christian Fjeldsted became a member of the Presidency of the 70. I think that's interesting, that they happen to know each other. Like, that's kind of a big coincidence, don't you think? In this calling, he was signally blessed, and hundreds of people identified themselves with the church during his 2 years presidency. In 1858, he emigrated with his family to Utah, arriving in Salt Lake City in October of that year. He made his home in the Sugar House Ward, where he took an active part in church affairs, and also performed much hard manual labor in order to support himself and family. He was ordained to 70 February 5, 1859, by Elder William H. Walker. In 1867, he was called on a mission to Scandinavia. Accompanied by other elders, he crossed the plains in an ox train and reached Copenhagen, Denmark, after 8 weeks' travel. During the first year of his mission, he presided over the Aalborg Conference again. Later, he labored as a traveling elder in the Scandinavian Mission, and finally was appointed to take charge of the Christiana Conference, Norway. I've understood that it's now the Oslo Conference, but I don't know if the name of the city changed or just the name of the conference. Being honorably released, he returned home in 1870. 2 years later, he was called to labor as a missionary among the Scandinavian saints in the northern counties of Utah, and he located at Logan, Cache County, which is still his home. Okay, so he moved to the north part. I guess there were a lot of Scandinavian saints, yeah? In 1881, he was called by President John Taylor to take another mission to Scandinavia, this time to preside over the mission. He occupied this position about 2 years and a half, and after his return home in 1884, he was ordained one of the first 7 presidents of the 70 by President Wilford Woodruff. This ordination took place April 28, 1884. 1829, so he was 55? I guess that's kind of elderly for this time, yeah? Since his life expectancy wasn't that high. So, well, he's getting on in years, yeah. I think he's older than Seymour B. Young, who was his senior in the quorum, yeah? Interesting. In 1886, he was called on another mission to Scandinavia, where he labored as a traveling elder in the Scandinavian Mission for 2 years, and then succeeded Elder Niels C. Flygar, or is it Flygare? I'm not sure, in the presidency of the mission. After an absence of 4 years, he returned to his mountain home in 1890 and resumed his labors among the 70s. In the spring of 1897, he was called on a special mission to Chicago, where he assisted in the raising up of a branch of the church consisting largely of Scandinavians. He returned to Utah in the fall of the same year. In the beginning of April 1901, he left his home on still another mission to Scandinavia, which he probably still was at the time of writing this, since this was in May of 1901, yeah? President Fjeldsted is universally loved and respected by all who know him. Especially is this the case with the Scandinavian saints, in whose interest he has devoted nearly his entire life. His affable manner and pleasant, genial nature has paved his way to the hearts of the people, both saints and strangers, and now toward the evening of his earthly career, he certainly has the satisfaction of knowing that his life's labors have been a success, and that his efforts have been appreciated. His untiring devotion to his Master's cause has classed him among God's noblemen, and as long as the knowledge of the great missionary work done by the Latter-day Saint elders in the 19th century shall be remembered and remain matters of record. The name of Elder Christian Daniel Fjeldsted will be had in honorable remembrance as one of the most energetic and faithful among them. That is a really short article. I was kind of expecting more. It didn't go into much detail. I'm a little disappointed. Considered in Anton H. Lund's story, there were so many very, very personal stories. I have the feeling they didn't actually interview him for this one. Yeah, like they really glossed over a lot of detail. They're like just facts, just list the facts. There were also several like decades that they completely skipped over. I did not miss that they skipped from 1859 to 1867. You know, I mean, that's a huge leap. You're like, oh yeah, and in between nothing happened? What? Like, I guess he was like doing a physical job, they said. But other than that, they didn't really mention at all what he was up to. So that's really short. But, okay, so it feels like he is very, very involved in the Scandinavian saints, in missionary work, and particularly, and he's not afraid of work in general. Yeah, he seems very willing to get up and do what needs to be done. And at the time of writing this, in 1901, he was 72. Yeah? And that's quite aged for this time. So, I'm going to do some fact checking real quick. And come with me. Come look with me. So, Wikipedia. Don't fail me now. Christian Daniel Fjeldsted, born the 20th of February, 1829, died 23rd of December, 1905. At the age of 76, yes? 76, yeah. And it's sometimes spelled Fjeldsted instead of Fjeldsted, yeah? Was a general authority of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, from 1884 to his death. Fjeldsted was one of the first Scandinavian converts to Mormonism and was a prominent Mormon missionary to his home country of Denmark and the other Scandinavian countries. Fjeldsted was born by Sundbyvestar. Yeah, I think that's how you say it. In Copenhagen, Denmark. In 1851, he and his wife were taught about Mormonism from LDS Church missionary and apostle Erastus Snow. They became members of the LDS Church in 1852. The following year, he was ordained an elder in the church by Peter O. Hansen. They did mention that. And he came to preside over districts in the church in Amager and Aalborg, Denmark, and Christiania, now Oslo, Norway. I feel like they got that information from this article. I mean, am I wrong? Maybe. In 1858, Fjeldsted and his family emigrated to Utah Territory to join the Gathering of the Latter-day Saints in Salt Lake City. Well, they didn't really mention that, so that's interesting. From 1867 to 1870, once again, they skipped everything in between, Fjeldsted served a church mission to Denmark and Norway. In 1884, he became a member of the church's first 7 presidents of the 70. Yeah, you already mentioned that. Did you say it twice? As a general authority of the church, Fjeldsted served 2 more missions to Scandinavia, including 2 terms as the president of the Scandinavian Mission of the Church from 1888 to 1890, and from 1904 to 1905. Okay, that's still in the future at this time of writing this one, so that means that the calling he had now to go to Scandinavia was not to be mission president, but was to probably be a missionary, and then they changed their mind while he was there, maybe? Fjeldsted also served missions in northern Utah. Yeah, they mentioned that in Logan, yeah? And in Chicago, Illinois, also, they mentioned that one, among Scandinavian immigrants. Shortly after returning to Utah from Scandinavia, Fjeldsted died in Salt Lake City. He was a practitioner of plural marriage and had 4 wives and 15 children. Okay, they didn't actually mention what he died of. Also, 4 wives. I'm assuming his oldest... Okay, let's see. Spouses. Karen Olsen. I'm assuming that was his first wife that he had married at age 20, yeah? Johanna Maria Christiansen. Katrina Marie Christiansen. Were they sisters? Because that's a bit sketchy. Or did they just happen to have the same last name? I guess it's not that uncommon of a last name, but still. Josefina Margareta Larsen. They all sound Scandinavian to me. I don't know if they're all Danish, though. They could also be, like, Swedish or Norwegian. Interesting. But 15 children. That's a big family. I'm glad my family's not that big. Okay. Well, it's still lacking details. But it seems like all the facts were correct. I have to say, these articles are pretty factual in general. That does make me year that was, it seemed to be, have just been typed wrong. But not on this article. Yeah. I feel like I don't really have a beat on who he is as a person. They said he's a very warm and loving kind of a person, but, you know, they told no stories about him, which makes me feel like I still don't know who he is, which is a little sad, yeah? So I'll just say, if I happen to find another article on this person, then I will read that one as well. Not today, but, you know, it's one of those, like, I feel like it's incomplete as far as talking about his life, which is a little sad. Once again, anybody who speaks Danish, please correct my pronunciation in the comments. And other than that, I feel like it's a little bit unsatisfying, this one, since we know so little, and there were no real stories. They were just kind of, you know, bullet point facts on this one. Too bad. Hopefully we can get some more information at some point. Anyways, but I hope you enjoyed that anyway, and learned a little bit about Christian Fjeldsted. And if you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.